Good morning, everyone. I'm Dean Gi Yoon from the Reynolds School of Journalism at the University of Nevada, Reno. Behind every great news story is a storyteller who understands the weight of the words they speak. For over 3 decades, our guest today has been the steady voice for millions. Dunia Elvir didn't just join the world of journalism, she helped shape its very landscape in the United States. Starting her journey in 1990 at Telemundo 52 in Los Angeles, Ms. Elvir navigated the worlds of the radio and print before returning to the TV in 2000. Since 2002, she has been the face of primetime news at Telemundo, serving as a trusted anchor and a relentless seeker of truth. When you look at Ms. Elvir's career, the numbers are staggering, but the stories behind them are even more profound. She holds 17 Los Angeles area Emmy Awards, an Edward R. Murrow Award, and 3 Golden Mics. She is a journalist who leans into the most pressing issues of our time. Just last year, she received the 2025 Gold Tally National Award for her exceptional work in Voces del Cambio Climatico. I don't speak Spanish, by the way. A project that gave a megaphone to the human side of the climate crisis. Ms. Elvir's influence extends far beyond the newsroom. She is a leader among leaders, currently serving as the president of the National Association of Hispanic Journalists. Her legacy is even woven into the fabric of American history through the Smithsonian's Escuchame initiative, which chronicles the history of Spanish language broadcasting. Among the artifacts at the National Museum of American History is a pair of her own painted tennis shoes, a symbolic journey from her roots in Honduras to the streets of Watts, and ultimately to the heights of national television. Today, Ms. Elvir is joined by a panel that represents the excellence we strive for here at the Reynolds School. Leading our conversation is our moderator, Professor Cesar Andrews. Professor Andrews is a Leonard Distinguished Chair in Media Ethics and Writing, bringing a lifetime of editorial leadership and integrity to today's discussion. Joining the stage are 2 of our outstanding Reynolds students, Kelsea Frobes, the executive editor of the Nevada Sagebrush, who leads our campus's independent student voice, and Ally Ibarra-Soltero, the president of our campus chapter of the National Association of Hispanic Journalists. Please join me in welcoming to the stage, they're already in the stage, Cesar Andrews, our students panelist, and our guest of honor, Dunia Elvir.
How you feeling?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Beautiful city.
Yes. Dunia spoke to my media ethics class this morning, and she gave a bunch of great tips. And among those tips was to try to create the right environment for the conversation. So we wanted to start by echoing what you suggested to students in finding out how the source is doing. And you said you're doing just fine, and we're all good to go. So I know that opportunities exist in media, and we spend a lot of time in the Reynolds School talking about those opportunities. That's kind of like the purpose of what we do. I want to raise this issue, though. So in media these days, there's lots of disruption. There's lots of uncertainty. We read periodically about layoffs and all kinds of other challenges to the business, to the industry. So with that being the case, why study media? And why seek a career in media these days, given the backdrop and the landscape?
I'm gonna answer you like a mom, you know. Why have kids if I won't sleep for 9 months? Why have kids if I won't be able to eat? You know, why to do things that you know there's a setback there on an issue? Why we're gonna stop pursuing journalism when we're still humans, we're still alive, we're still here, we're not going anywhere, we're still billions of people in this little home that we call Earth. So the fact that we are encountering a lot of layoff, it's not a new phenomenon, it's cyclical. I remember when I was very young, everyone was petrified because of the layoff in newspapers and the radio. Radio died. The radio was the big thing. I started in radio. I was in love with the radio. And then I'm thinking, it's dying. Radio's not going anywhere. And look at now, podcast is pretty much radio. You know, digital is radio. So as many layoffs you see, it's just part of the restructuring of companies, but also every bad thing has a positive thing. Every time they let go of this institutional knowledge, maybe let's be cynical and say because they make too much money and the companies cannot pay those $1 million salaries anymore. That means a big opportunity for those that are getting themselves ready to get into the professional arena. They're emerging journalists or students like you guys here. So that will be my answer. Don't stop, because fear can either paralyze you or mobilize you, and you choose. I choose to mobilize myself when there's a fear of this layoff.
Thank you for that. I'm going to raise a second question, and I'm going to hand off to my fellow panelists, and we'll keep this party going. So diversity has been a significant issue over the years. That issue has been intensified in recent times with an administration in Washington that appears to target a full-fledged assault on diversity. In the State of the Union address just about 2 weeks ago, Donald Trump, the president himself, it was just one line in a very long State of the Union speech, but that one line was, "We ended DEI in America." And then he moved on to talk about various other things. From your perspective as a veteran journalist, and particularly from your perspective as the president of NAHJ, can you talk about the reality of diversity as you see it?
It depends where we're going to start peeling the onion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, diversity is not going to go away. We're here. If I'm going to use Hispanics as an example, we are more than 50% in California already. We are 20% in US, and by 2060, we're going to be more than 50%. So we're here. Aquí estamos y no nos vamos, they said in Spanish. We're here, we're not going anywhere. So what I do believe it's happening in the big corporations, they're shifting the way they are working. For example, everybody heard of the verticals being eliminated in NBC. I can use that as an example because it was such a big news. But NBC is not eliminating DEI or diversity. The example is that everybody they hire now, they're looking for bilingual people because NBC owns Telemundo. So they're not concerned about my accent. For example, 10 years ago, it was unheard of that I will be on air on NBC because of my accent. I actually asked, hey, can I do some stories for NBC? We're in the same newsroom. We are in the same room, the studios, everything is in the same location. And the answer was no. The answer was no, and it was a very sincere, straightforward answer. You're not ready for NBC. And I'm like, no, I'm ready. And then the correction was, well, the audience is not ready for you. But now, that's not a limitation. So it doesn't matter to me, as Dunia, as my personal opinion, who comes and tell me, I don't want you, even if it comes from the authority, you know, the community is saying something different. Because the community is us, it's reflected in every American you see. I see your face, my face, her face. So you can cover sun with one finger. I mean, I can cover it if I close one eye, but when I open both eyes, it's impossible. So we're not going anywhere. DEI is not being eliminated. It doesn't matter how much people want to scream about it. the reality is in every day in every street.
Thank you for that. A quick follow-up. Therefore, what should our students be thinking and doing related to diversity as they navigate all the things that they have to navigate as students of media and future professionals, for many of them in media?
I'm gonna use my business brain and just tell you, you are the product, depending how you brand yourself. Okay, so I wanna think I am the best journalist in the room, no matter what. She may think she's the best one, but that's her. I'm not gonna compete with her. I'm gonna compete with me yesterday. So you go into that room and you own it. I'm not thinking, and I'm not gonna get totally focused on if I'm brown. My grandmother is Garifuna, my mom's Spaniard. I'm kind of olive in between, but that doesn't really matter to me. What matters to me is my brand, what I'm bringing to the table. So if you walk like a duck and you sound like a duck, people will perceive you as a duck, regardless of whatever skin color we have or whatever the norm is that you should be in specific newsroom. We are in 2026. Things are totally different. I can tell you, in my first job, I was told by a Hispanic, we were looking for a Mexican person. We were not looking for Honduran, so we gotta let you go. So that discrimination goes everywhere. In Honduras, I was too dark. My aunt told me when I was 8, thank God you're smart because you're so ugly and short. My aunt who loves me. So there's a lot of cultural aspects that will still stick with us, and a lot of socioeconomic aspects, and a lot of things that are part of the everyday, but that doesn't have to be your problem. Let it be somebody else's problem. Just bring your brand, strong brand.
Thank you. Kelsey?
Turmoil oftentimes comes with our profession. So my question more for you is, journalists, especially young journalists, how do you report on a situation accurately and giving the most information that you can, while also keeping your mental health in check and making sure you're able to continue reporting following something horrible that has happened or something that really affects you personally?
Yeah, that was similar to what we were talking in the class earlier today. One of the biggest things that can help you when you're young, because I made those mistakes when I was young, I'm not the news, I'm the messenger. So knowing that I'm bringing the message from point A to point B will help me stay focused. And it's kind of like an invisible shield for your mental health. Doesn't mean you're not gonna feel, doesn't mean you're not gonna get teary, doesn't mean you're not gonna be heartbroken, but you have a mission there to give the information, to bring the right sources. That kind of keeps you so focused that it, in a way, distract your brain from becoming the news, if that makes sense. Like, I wouldn't do any interviews at the beginning without crying when they were interviews with undocumented people, because I was undocumented for 10 years. So it took me a while to learn how to separate myself from the story. And a professor, a teacher told me, Dunia, you're not the news, you're the vehicle. Think about it. You're taking someone to the hospital, that's the person with the stomach ache, not you. So that helps us stay focused. You still have to be empathetic, but don't become the news, and that's gonna help you navigate that. And also be open to talk about it. If it really impacted you more than what you realize, there's always help. There's always a colleague, a previous professor, or in the, where I work, they give us mental health services anytime we want, and they don't ask you why you need to go. So in these days, mental health is something that everybody is more aware of, so the services are there in the different institutions.
All right, so I know as a student, I struggle with keeping my life balance. You are a mom, you are an anchor for Telemundo, and you're also the president of NAHJ. So what advice would you give students for finding that proper work-life balance? And also adding extracurriculars on top of all that.
We all have 24 hours. So all depends how you manage your time. One thing, if I can advise the students, let's focus on learning time management. When we learn time management, you'll be amazed of the things that you can do. For example, I used to scroll a lot, and I put an alarm to myself to go every 15 minutes. Every time my alarm went, it was like, oh shoot, stop scrolling. I used to scroll so much, and then I realized I was losing a lot of time. Instead of scrolling, you can read something that is gonna, make you more knowledgeable. Another way that you can time yourself or get involved in extracurriculum stuff, look for and think of the meaning. What's the meaning coming to college? The successful point is when you graduate, but that's not the final line. That means you start something new again. So if you have meaning and you take more responsibility, you'll be amazed how much more you can do. But it starts with time management. We have to learn how to manage our time and be brutally honest with ourselves. And that is very difficult to say, I'm just consuming oxygen, I'm not breathing. It's a big difference. And when you are brutally honest with yourself that you're just losing your time in things that are so stupid, then you realize, gosh, I can be doing A, B, C, and D instead. I don't know if that answers, but yeah.
So you gave very, very good advice earlier on students, in essence, being professional in their approach to stories, that the story is the story and the reporter is not the story. For purposes of this conversation, you're kind of the story a little bit. So if you don't mind, can you talk about your origins? And I happen to know from reading background material that there's an amazing and inspirational story that is that forms the life of our speaker today. So talk about where you started and how you ended up where you are now.
It's one of those things that you gotta think, pinch me to know if I'm still awake. I come from a very poor background. I was born in Honduras, La Ceiba, which is a very small city. We didn't have any floor. I remember when they installed the floor, I was probably 6 or 7. So we used to use these things that look like a broom, but they have a piece of wood to compact the dirt to make it flat to look like a floor. We didn't have a toilet. We had the little house on the back. And we didn't have running water in the house either. I had to go to the well. That's a different story because I almost got my hands burned by looking at some earrings through the well, and I dropped them. They were my grandma's, and I lied to her. I said, no, I didn't touch them. And she's like, well, when you say the truth, if you don't lie, you don't feel the heat. So I'm gonna put your hands on the tortilla comal, and you won't get burned. I was like, it was me. So her ruthless behavior, it was like such a big structure. That was the only way she knew how to raise us, but she was always thinking about principle. It's a principle before personality. So I was a poor person doesn't mean I didn't have the same as the wealthy person. So I always dream with doing something different than what we wear. People with money in my town will call me pastelera, and some of the kids wouldn't let me walk on their sidewalk because we were not worthy of walking on their sidewalk. And it bothered me, but I used to think a lot about my grandma. So we came to the States, and this is a true story, and it was so funny when I realized the whole thing. I don't know if you guys know about Watts City. Watts is a little bit lower than Compton. If you heard of Compton, there was a lot of gangs and crime, and Watts, it's a little bit worse. Still in California, the school with the lowest rate today, it's Jordan High School. That's the school I went, and it was the school with the lower rate when I went to school. So I came to live in Watts, and it was like the poorest city you can think of. But for me, I remember when I stepped in the house, I felt I was so filthy rich, because I opened the door and I saw a toilet inside, and it had a carpet, and it had a kitchen, and it was like 6 of us, but we had 2 bedrooms. And in Honduras, it was 5 of us and 1 bed. And it was like, oh my God, I'm gonna make it. I'm really, really rich. That's how I felt. And I never took for granted being in this country. I know it's a country with a lot of issues, but I can tell you from the bottom of my heart, coming from Honduras and reporting in everywhere. I reported in Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras. I went to so many places when I was an international correspondent. There's no better place than United States. We still have a lot of opportunities. This is the place where a kid with no floor, who was selling food on the streets of Honduras at 11 years old, can be the prime time #1 station in LA against all the odds. I'm the first non-Mexican anchor for Spanish station in LA. That was unheard of. I got fired from the radio because I didn't have the proper accent. And I had 2 options. Once again, the fear of being rejected, either mobilize you or paralyze you. You know what I did? I just went and started learning the Mexican accent as much as I could. And I didn't get it, but I got so neutral that I didn't tell anybody where I was from. The first years of my career, people couldn't tell where I was from when I spoke Spanish. And that helped me get there, get the seat. So it's a story that represents my grandmother. And sometimes your parents, and I know I'm speaking like a mom, if they're tough with you because they know your potential. Sometimes we don't trust in our potential, but somebody else can see what you don't see. And if you let someone guide you, you can get really far. And I'm an example that you can get what you visualize if you work hard. There's a lot of people more talented than me out there. A lot of people that have better degree. I don't have a journalism degree. I have a business degree. I have a master's in administration. I have other type of talents that will put me in disadvantage from a high qualified journalist. But I'm there because I worked really hard. So I think working hard can compensate the talent that we don't have sometimes, because we're not perfect.
So pick up on that. So from Honduras and the environment that you described, all the way to a news anchorship in one of the most dynamic markets in the country, and perhaps in the world. So getting there is one thing, as you've described. How do you stay there? What do you do to maintain and sustain and stay there?
The best way to say it is make sure they feel it and they notice when you're not in the newsroom. I don't only do my work, I don't only work hard, I'm always helping my colleagues. I make sure that my producer feels good. I ask her, how you doing, how's your day going? I know I said that earlier. For me, if you bring your essence as a human and you don't forget we're all in the same boat. Today I'm here and I don't know if she had a rough morning. I don't know if the bus left her. I don't know if she had breakfast. So I can't assume anything. I have to treat everybody with special kindness. And that helps you stay afloat, because then you become a person that the newsroom trusts you. I was away for almost a year. I broke my leg on January 6th. And for whatever reasons, it didn't heal. I went back to work on November 17th. And everyone was still calling me, hey, Dunia, there's the fires going. We need a family. And I know you know the community. Do you know anybody? And they trust me. And I was able to support from my bed. And I was receiving phone calls. How you doing? Can we visit you? And you develop this family in your newsroom. And that gives you longevity because you belong to that community. It's not only going in, clock out. You can go for just your job, mind your own business, and don't engage with anybody, and you're still doing the right thing. But it's different when you are part of a community that they are looking, where is she today? You know, and I think that gives you longevity when you understand that we are together. We're here together. Either if you are at home in your family or if you are in a newsroom, if you look at it from that aspect, from that point of view, you're gonna get far. Because a lot of people that you are working with that are maybe interns today, tomorrow that can be my boss. I don't know. And people doesn't remember what you tell them. They remember how you make them feel with what you tell them. And that is key too, but you have to be genuine. It doesn't have to be just to stay there, because if you fake it, it's gonna come across too. People will perceive it too.
As someone that has done reporting for as many years as you have, is there any stories or backgrounds or different areas in the country that are not being reported on that you think that journalists, and especially young journalists, should be going and seeking out stories from?
I think the Native Americans, more than anything else, we always talk about the Latinos, we talk about the African Americans. I talk a lot about the Garifuna community for obvious reasons. My grandmother was Garifuna. But I think we are lacking on giving visibility to the Native Americans. I don't think we're reporting correctly on them or enough. And sometimes when you see reports, it's always related to casinos, and our Native Americans are much more than just casinos. You know, they were here before we came here, and I don't think we're giving them the visibility and the respect we should be giving them. And I'm including myself, because we don't report on them enough. And they are a huge part of our communities, even though their numbers are small when it comes to population. They were the first ones. It's like if I don't respect my grandmother, you know? And I think that's a community we should report more on.
Next up, Ally.
All right, so we mentioned National Association of Hispanic Journalists. When did you join them, and how has that helped you or other Latinos in your community reach leadership positions, and how can it help students here get further in their career?
I joined in 2003, I believe, 2003, 2004, and the way they helped me back then, you can tell I have an accent. I didn't speak English back then. So it was a place where I was getting that support that I needed. They spoke Spanish, so I felt like I was part of a community. In my case, it was that. It was the fact that I was able to go and volunteer and be part of the recruitment or the booth and get that one chance. Today, Vicky was saying, it's like, or Claudia, one of them said, it's like being the receptionist. You get to see everybody that comes in. So I was volunteering, and that gave me the opportunity to meet a lot of people and meet the boss of my bosses that I will never meet in a different circumstances, because when they come to the studio, they come in and out, do their meetings, and that's it. But I was there in NSJ conference year after year, and that really helped me grow, because then they included me in different projects that they brought to NSJ. NSJ is mainly focused on students and emerging journalists. We are 4,000 members approximately, but we have a lot of programs for the students. The problem is sometimes students, I know, because I remember when I was a student, we get overwhelmed with so much homework and we don't read everything. We just browse through things. And NSJ sends to the students, for example, newsletters every 2 weeks. One Tuesday of the month is for conference related. The other Tuesday, you will notice the pattern. It's other type of information. And when they are sending you stuff, it's scholarships. We have a lot of scholarships, the Latino Reporter Program. We have a lot of mentors that are serving students. I mentor a lot of students, and each and every of my students that I mentored last year, the last 3-4 years, they graduated and they got a job, because we walk them through the process. I introduce them to people. I guide them how to do the resume, how to switch the demo, and your mentor will guide you. If you want to be a meteorologist, for example, you're not going to get it maybe on the first application, but if you apply yourself to be open to have different type of, areas within journalism, you'll get in. It's like, mete la pata and then you push the body. That's the key with journalism. You put your foot in, keep the door open, just wiggle it a little bit so the door doesn't close, and then you just put your body in with your hard work, your dedication, and showcasing your skills. I started pulling cables. I used to do just, back then, you guys are too young for that, but my position was the assistant of the cameraman, and officially the name was the donkey. I was the donkey when I worked because I was carrying the cables, the box for the audio, the walkie-talkies. We didn't even have cell phones. Gosh, that's old.
Sticking with NAHJ, what is the future looking like, especially under the times that we're in?
I think the future, it's, like I said before, it's cyclical. We go through cycles all the time. Journalism's not going anywhere. We may have seasons like right now that things look dark, but in the darkness moments when you can see the light, if you turn all of these lights and you just leave that one on, you're gonna see the light because everything's dark. So don't let external noise interfere with your focus, because that's gonna paralyze all of us. We have to keep going. We have to continue believing in the power of journalism. In Latin America, they call it the fourth power. You have a mic, you have the power to tell people what governments don't tell them, what institutions don't want the community to know. Use that power responsibly, and we're not gonna go anywhere. I mean, we are as needed as doctors.
I want to follow up and stick with your NAHJ theme. And Ally made a reference to this, these times, and these times include so many things. I talked about the assault, basically the war on diversity by some aspects of society. One element that's been prominent, obviously, this year is immigration and the activities of ICE. So when you think about NAHJ and your members, any particular patterns that you want to share with us about the impact on the members of NAHJ as it relates to them and their status, and as it relates to the individuals who are part of their lives, their families and loved ones?
It's a very emotional moment right now. Like I said before, I was undocumented for 10 years, from 1988 to 1998. So in that time, we didn't have social media, we didn't have smartphones. But I can tell you firsthand, I remember seeing the Border Patrol going through the main cities of LA. And you will see the newspaper the next day with an empty street, oh, Border Patrol was here. So the way this time is impacting us is because it's in our face, because you have 300 million reporters per se with their smartphones. So we are so saturated of these incidents that are bringing like a very emotional breakdown for a lot of people. With that doesn't mean that it's not horrible what is happening. It's happening a lot. But I think sometimes having so many phones, so much misinformation, there's a lot of stuff that it gets through the cracks. But going to the real cases that impact our students, we had last year in the conference some students that we knew they were DACA protected and probably a few that were undocumented. So what NHJ did is just follow special protocol with safety, with the hotel that we are doing the conference to make sure that if ICE comes here, what are we gonna do? That's a huge question and a big responsibility. So we just took all the steps that you can take and just hope that ICE doesn't come to our conference, because at the end of the day, we can't keep them from going to different cities. when they are doing the raids. But we can, as reporters, report on what they're doing and expose the situations that are not done right, when they go and don't have an order, when they go and arrest a reporter that is being identified because it's a political asylum petitioner, and they know that reporter is reporting on immigration. It's impossible to think that the person is not targeted. So in that situation, just happened in Nashville a few days ago. A reporter got detained. She's still in detention center. We are sending letters. We are getting involved. We are raising our voices on behalf of those reporters, and not only the reporters, but whoever comes, you know, and as a student or as a freelance, because we have a lot of freelancers too. And I think if we keep the unity and making sure that community hears what is happening, you can protect people in a way too. You can protect people emotionally too, because it's very draining. For me, if I'm gonna be honest, and I'm gonna speak as Dunia, not as a journalist, it opens a lot of wounds for me. I just have to stay focused and remind myself that I'm just the vehicle, like I said earlier. Because it's very easy to get trapped in all of these emotions, especially when everybody in this room must know someone that is undocumented, or know someone that has someone that is undocumented, if it's not directly in your family.
Thank you for that. We don't have a lot of time, but we will have some time for audience questions. And my multitasking fellow panelists will be on the lookout for anyone who raises your hand. Wait for the mic to reach you, and we'll go from there. I'm going to raise one question in the meantime, but think about what you want to raise, and we will recognize you at that point. So we have students who have interest in a wide range of things. So we've talked a lot about journalism. We have students who are interested in marketing and public relations and advertising and media studies and a wide range of things. The common thread, at least as I see it, that ties us all together, it's more than one thing, but one thing is storytelling. So can you talk about your approach to storytelling, to telling a story that's going to land with an audience and have impact?
We all know about source credibility. And every time we hear about source credibility, we think about the sources, if they're credible. But there's also source credibility when it comes to you. When I started doing stories about the undocumented community, I'm a huge source with credibility because I was undocumented. I know the struggles. I know what I went through. I know when I had to work only cleaning houses because no one will hire me because I didn't have documents. So if you start working in your community, get to know your community, you'll become a source that is credible. And I like to compare that because we are always thinking about sources and credibility in the context of the people where we get our sources from. But we are also journalists that have this huge source credibility anchoring thing, and that helps you with the storytelling because then you come from a place that you know that community so well that you will be able to relate to their needs if you're writing about that community, or if you're investigating something, you will know exactly where that investigation is going to take you, or what they want to know from that specific issue, because you get to know that community. Now, let's say you get a job in Buffalo or Connecticut, okay? And you're not from there. How do you develop source credibility? Be a pain in the neck with the resource department and the research department and ask them, hey, I want to know your demographics. I want to know in which county we are being watched. I want to know what city has the biggest turn on, turn off. That works for everywhere, for radio, digital, TV. They have these studies that they can tell you who turned the TV off and went to sleep or didn't come back, or who turned the channel and went to a different channel, in which channel they went, in which specific minute. So if you study that every 3 months for the first year you're there, you become so strong and knowledgeable with that community that your storytelling is gonna be so refined that people will be asking you, how in the heck you connect with them like that? And that comes back to what this institution and every university does. Knowledge is power. You get the knowledge and you become really powerful with your storytelling.
Thank you for that. Any questions from the audience? Any questions from the audience?
This is kind of really specific, but news anchor you is different from personal life you. How do you get good at detaching from personal life you and stepping into the role of the news anchor?
When you're on the set, pretty much, like I said, the easiest way to see it is a vehicle. It's hard at first. Like I said before, I used to cry with a lot of stories because I saw myself and I saw my grandma in every story. I used to do a lot of human stuff, a lot of natural disasters, hurricanes, explosions in mines and stuff. So it's almost impossible not to get affected. But once we start doing the trade and we learn that we are the vehicle, we are the bridge that connect the audience with the viewer, we start detaching a little bit without losing your empathy. That is key because it's very tricky to get to that point. And that's why sometimes you see anchors that are so like, you can turn down the sound, but looking at them, you're still connecting based on their emotions, their empathy. But they're not emotionally vested in the story. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's with time that you accomplish that. And the good exercise is reminding yourself, I'm not the story. I am the journalist telling the story. And that will help you get there. But it's very difficult at first because when we're young, we're more sensitive towards everything. And when we get older, you live so much more that you see so much tragedy that you start understanding life is full of suffering every day. The key is how I'm gonna navigate through that suffering. There's not one person that haven't encountered big suffering. So you get older and you start managing that a little bit better. But if you keep reminding yourself, I'm the bridge, that's gonna help you detach without losing empathy.
Anybody else? There is a hand in back. Yes. Yeah, sorry, I'm sorry, Ally. I got to work on my pointing. It's this way.
Hi. So what is your biggest recommendation for people our age coming out of college? How to get our foot in the door with like news anchors, newsrooms, or whatever kind of journalism you want to get into? What's the number one thing that you would tell us?
Internships. That's the number one thing, internships. I got all of my jobs through internships. I went to the radio and I was doing internship, and back then they didn't pay you. Back then it was free. And I had to take 3 buses from Watts to Hollywood to do that internship. It was almost 2 hours and a half to make it. The radio station was in the same building where CNN was. So you do internships, and don't go just there and warm up the chair. Because I've seen a lot of interns that they tell them, oh, you're gonna be on the assignment desk, or you're gonna be on the investigative unit. They sit there and they're just in the computer searching for information. No, that's one in a lifetime opportunity. You go there, and when you go to that station, you already research who is the editorial manager, who is the anchor, who's the investigative reporter, who does sport, who does what. So when you get there, you go, hey, hi, how you doing? I'm the new intern, blah, 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 blah. I know you've been here for such a many, whatever you want to say. Can I have 5 minutes with you? Can you check your agenda? When I can meet with you, I want to pick your brain. So if you do that, they will remember you. If you go and do your job and just stay in your seat, stay in your square, you don't ruffle any feathers, you don't do much than what you're there, get your check and leave, no one will remember you. No one. So number one, internship. Number two, make sure that they see you. Become visible in a positive way, not become invisible in a disruptive way, because that happens too. It's very easy to confuse that. You're not gonna go and introduce yourself when they are 10 minutes before going on the air because it's being annoying and not being aware of your surroundings. So you can actually just go and check the schedules. Okay, Dunia's going live at 5. She's out of makeup at 3:30. Let me go and hit her at 4 p.m. And you can ask the producer, hey, at what time they do promos? And then you know the schedule. Get informed who's in that newsroom that you're doing your internship. And trust me, they will remember you.
We're going to close with a couple of quick things. One is just, you've made a reference to your grandmother several times, and there was a word that sounded like an adjective to refer to her, and I don't know what the meaning of that word is.
Mami? Mami?
No, it was,
Garifuna?
yes. Tell me what that is. Educate us.
Garifunas are the native black community that came from St. Vincent to Honduras 227 years ago. The British didn't believe that they were native, didn't believe they were the owners of the land. They couldn't prove they were escaped slaves like they were thinking because they didn't have the marks. Their skins were clean. Back then, the slaves were all marked with whatever master it was. So my grandma is half Garifuna, and I have a lot of love and respect for the Garifuna community because they're survivors. They were put in boats the British paid. They told them, either you leave or we kill you. And they gave them 5 boats with food and everything. The Garifunas that stayed, there were 2,000 of them, thought that the 2,500 Garifunas that left died in the middle of the ocean, and the ones that left thought those were killed. And with the years, later on, they learned that they both survived.
Thank you for that. So closing thought has to do with ethics. This is ultimately an ethics forum, and for some of us, everything is about ethics, right? Trust is a really difficult issue these days for media. To put it a different way, there's a lot of distrust in what media people do and how they do it. So given that that's a dominant environment and a reality, can you provide some closing thoughts on how individuals can maintain personal integrity despite that overall environment of mistrust?
I'm gonna use the same phrase I use in your class, your brand. You have to take care of your brand. I know that's very business-oriented mentality, but you are a journalist and you're representing yourself before you represent the institution that you're working with. So if the community trusts you based on your work, integrity, always doing the right thing to do sometimes is the most difficult thing to do, is the one that takes you the longest route. But if you keep doing that, people will remember you, they will trust you. And I can give you a lot of examples of different situations where I was able to interview people because they said, no, I'm not gonna talk to any other reporter, I'll talk to Dunia. Because they know at the end of the day I won't manipulate the information. So trust is something that it's very complicated to keep protecting these days because anybody with a cell phone goes and say, I'm a journalist. Anybody can buy on Amazon a press vest. So those bad characters are putting our integrity and our image in danger. And then people in power that also don't respect our work are putting our integrity and our work at risk as well. That's why it's even more important that you handle yourself like your brand. You're a product. You guys wouldn't invited me if you didn't think I have something important to say to the students. if I was involved in a lot of scandals, for example. So you carry yourself with grace, with integrity, and always, you know, do the right thing, even if it takes you longer, even if it's more work, more complicated, because that's gonna build your brand, and that's gonna gain the trust of the community that you're serving. And that's the first thing. If your community that you're serving trusts you, that can take you a long, long way.
Thank you for that. That's going to end this forum. It's not the end of the conversation, however. At 1 o'clock, Dunia Elvir will be in the Lynn Reading Room in the Reynolds School building and continuing the conversation in a more informal way. All of you are invited to that. Please join me in thanking her for being here. Please join me in thanking the two student panelists. And I thank you. Thank you very much.